Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we're going to be going over Gold Mythic Stripes and my thoughts on the character in terms of what you should do in claiming her from the Mythic market, because her usability in the game is kind of unique over other characters that we have in the game. If we see Stripes right now in the Mythic market, you can of course claim up to 5 copies. Generally speaking, when an event is running or any sort of character is released, getting that character to limit break 3 is the optimum thing you can do. However, with Stripes, it's going to be slightly different based on where her main usability is going to be, which is going to be taking towers in war. Those familiar with 5-star Rocket A will know how he was very good at taking towers. Stripes works pretty much exactly the same way. There is not much difference between the two characters in terms of the rush being able to completely clear the entire stage of any walkers that are currently on that side of the screen. In tower attacks, obviously walkers only come from one direction, so they can obviously all be taken out as long as they're not in shadows. And this is the part that is key. That is because there are 2 different types of towers in RTS. There is what I like to call 3 move towers and 4 move towers. This is the amount of moves the walkers need to take to get completely out of the shadows, and every single walker will be on the screen being able to be taken down by a rush by Stripes. Now first we'll concentrate on a 3 move tower, which will take a minimum of 4 turns for Gold Mythic Stripes to take down. You'll do a basic attack, a basic attack, a basic attack, and then an adrenaline rush. When this adrenaline rush goes off, it obviously will completely clear the walkers on the screen. All the walkers should be out of the shadows when this actually happens. A character needs to have no AP gain on their weapon, and also an adrenaline rush between 41 and 60 to be able to get this to work properly. Now moving on to the 4 move towers, where it will take the walkers 4 moves or 4 turns to be able to completely get out of the shadows. It would obviously take 5 attacks for Stripes to completely remove all of those walkers. First you'll do 4 basic attacks as the walkers come onto the screen, and then the last turn, after every single walker is out of the shadows, the adrenaline rush will happen, and then it will completely clear the walkers again. This again will require a weapon with no AP gain at all, and an adrenaline rush cost of between 61 and 80. Now as you can see, we need to have 2 different AP costs on adrenaline rushes to be able to get this to happen with those 2 different tower types. Coming back to Stripes' kit, if we look at the adrenaline rush upgrades, you can see at grade 5 the AP cost is reduced from 66 down to 55. This means if you get a copy of Stripes up to grade 5 and above, the AP cost will be low enough that the 3 move towers will be able to be taken out on auto with the correct setup. However, this will make this character unable to take out the 4 move towers on auto, and this is where it could be good to have 2 separate copies of Stripes, one that remains at grade 1 and one that is grade 5 and above. During the event you can claim only 5 characters, so you'd have to get 1 character to a maximum of limit break 2, and then the other character would just have to sit there at grade 1, and then you'd have the 2 characters you require to take down the 2 towers. Now as you can see on my test region, I have got 2 copies of Gold Mythic Stripes. One is grade 5 and above, and the other copy is grade 1. If we look at the grade 5 and above character, it is confirmed. It is going to be a 55 AP cost rush. This would mean for the 3 move towers, we would have basic attack, basic attack, basic attack. The adrenaline rush would then be achieved, and then we'd rush, and at that point, all walkers would be on the screen, and we take out every single walker. You can actually test this out on a world map stage, just in case you wanted to test it out before war starts. If you go to world map stage 16.4, all walkers come from the same direction. So if you have your grade 5 and above Stripes in the team, you start the stage, When I hit auto, we can count the amount of basic attacks it's going to be. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, and then we'll have the Adrenaline Rush. Now, obviously against towers, the walkers will get out of the shadows perfectly before you do the Adrenaline Rush. On this stage, it actually happens a lot earlier, but this is just good to test it out. We do it a little bit faster speeds. 3, and then we can take everybody out. And this is how it will be in war. Except, like I said, it will be perfectly timed. The Adrenaline Rush will go off just as all the walkers come onto the screen. Now, the other version of Stripes that you can use is going to be Stripes at grade 1. I would still recommend leveling up this character as much as you can only get the character to 125, because stats are going to be reasonably important. You are obviously not going to be able to tier up the character past grade 1, but you might be able to get a few more levels on them based on the fact that I think a grade 1 can go to, I think, maybe level 150 or something along those lines. If we just keep leveling up, we'll see how high we can get the character. We are managing to get the character actually pretty high here. Is it 200s? This might be the max here. It is indeed. So you can get the character up to level 200 base. I would recommend doing that just for the defense rating, not so much for anything else. The attack isn't going to be a problem. The Adrenaline Rush will always clear the walkers. It's more about taking less damage, and that is going to be quite important, but we'll get onto that later in the video. If we come back to the Adrenaline Rush, you can see it's going to now be a 66 AP cost rush for the grade 1 Stripes. And this will take 4 basic attacks to get the Adrenaline Rush naturally, and then the Adrenaline Rush will go off. If we start the fight on the same stage that we were on before, which is 16-4, we can do it again at 1 times speed and count the basic attacks. It's going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, and then at this point, all the walkers would be on the screen on a 4-move tower. The Adrenaline Rush would automatically go off and it would clear the screen of walkers. Pretty much as simple as that. Now, I think a simple weapon that you could use on Gold Mythic Stripes for taking towers would be something along these lines. As long as it has 30% attack, 30% defense, or 30% HP, then you're going to be going along the right lines. You basically want to go for a pretty heavy stat-based weapon. When it comes to the 3rd slot, a lot of these things here, like you can see, bonus critical attack when attacking enemies, this sort of thing can have animations during the fight which can slow it down by like half a second or so. The bleeding ones as well, bleed ticks on enemies, can obviously do the same. We'll talk about this sort of stuff when we get onto the mods as well. So making it very simple, I'd maybe go for 30% attack, 30% defense, and 30% HP, just to increase all the stats. Remember, this weapon can be used on both of the Stripes. The grade 1 Stripes will have lower stats, so boosting them up nice and high is important, because what you don't want to happen is the character gaining too much AP when they get attacked by the walkers. You want to reduce that incoming damage with defense rating. You want to make that damage give less AP with higher HP rating, because obviously it's based on how much HP you lose, how much AP you gain. And then of course boosting the attack just a little bit, just to make sure that the rush is going to guarantee take down the walkers, which shouldn't be a problem. The walkers in towers are generally very weak. So upgrading the weapon to something like this before making it a 5-star could be a good way to go. We then make it a 5-star weapon, and then we just improve the stats on HP and defense by 5 and 10% themselves. I don't think you really need a 4th slot on this weapon. It just has a higher chance of slowing down the fight, because a lot of them, like I said, can add a small animation just to the fact that it would potentially reduce damage coming in or heal the character or something like that. So unless you want to add something like 1535, which could be fine as well, but you don't have to. This isn't going to be like some crazy weapon that has to be used at top tier level. It is just for this tower team. So after doing the final upgrades, you can see we just have lots of stats. You don't have to crit the upgrades either. It's just basically whatever you can get. Very basic weapon, just trying to increase the defense and HP, just to, like I said, to make sure that Stripes does not take as much damage, and when she does, it doesn't take as much HP, purely for the AP gain that can happen. We don't want her rushing a turn early if she gets hit a few times when it comes to especially the 4 move towers for the walkers. When it comes to the combat mods, I would go with something along these lines. Just for extra stats, I would not use a bottom left hand corner mod at all. A lot of them will add animation time, and that will slow you down. Things like graze, burn, bleed. A lot of these ones in the bottom left hand corner, the auxiliary mods, will add an animation. Perhaps you could use something like AP drain if you so wish, because you can't drain the AP of walkers, so it shouldn't have any animation at all. But then it would potentially be a usable character elsewhere. Obviously, if you do get this character to LB3 eventually, and then you've also got a grade 1 as well, if the character comes back in future events where you can claim the last character for LB3, you can potentially fully mod the LB3 version for things like raid attacks if you have a niche team that you think Stripes is going to be usable in, and it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Her base stats are going to be much higher because you can obviously level her up much higher. This is more important for the grade 1 version, like I said before, purely with that AP game. So hopefully this has been useful for you guys. Remember, it's 16.4 on the world map if you want to go and test out Stripes when you get the copies of her. You can obviously count the amount of attacks it takes for her to get the adrenaline rush, and then you know it's going to be enough to actually, you know, take down those towers based on how many walker moves actually happen. You can see when she gets attacked, she is going to gain a minimum of 1 AP every single attack. There's not much you can do about this. Sometimes you might need to be, you know, ready on the trigger to stop the auto when it comes to war attacks on that 4 move tower if you get completely overwhelmed by walkers early on. Now obviously you don't have to follow these instructions if you don't want to. If you want to just get the character to LB3 and use them in other parts of the game, that's absolutely fine. This just would be the optimum way to use this character as a tower attack character, and I do feel that Stripes is kind of going to be the meta, like basically the new Rocket Abraham or Lily, or the new kind of like main meta team. And it could potentially come down to the people who do have Stripes and the people who don't have Stripes when it comes to getting towers quickly. Having the different copies for the different tower types as well could be important if you really want to take things seriously. Now, if you have any thoughts on Stripes and my thoughts today, please leave them in the comments down below. I want to thank you very much for tuning into this video, and as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.